Help new Muslims in Africa. Every prayer, every Surah Fatiha they recite, you'll share in the reward. Your £50 will go towards sponsoring one person's education and meals for a month. 500 supports 10 and 5,000 helps sponsor an entire village. Donate now. Assalamu alaikum guys, and welcome to another episode of Smile to Jannah. The amount of times I've had to correct the mainstream media, I think they should have me on a payroll. You've probably seen headlines like this by Sky News and like this by the New York Times saying that there have been anti-Semitic attacks in Amsterdam. But we know from Israelis themselves, like the likes of Shulamit Aloni, who won the Israel Prize in the year 2000, and she said, anti-Semitism is just a tool that we use to quash any criticism against Israel. So let's look at the facts. It was a football match that was taking place in Amsterdam. The night before, you had Muslim taxi drivers that were being publicly beaten. You can see Palestinian flags were being dragged and torn down. And as they were getting ready for their match, of course, no Israeli football match would be complete without these genocidal chants. Here's one chant in which they are saying, let the IDF win to F the Arabs. Here's another chant saying, finish the Arabs. And then here from the horse's mouth itself, look, it's the Jerusalem Post, and they're saying, just in case, Mossad agents to join Maccabi Tel Aviv FC trip to Amsterdam. In other words, Mossad was there as well to whip up some hatred. You gotta have some hatred. You know what I mean? The fact that they're even allowing somebody committing a genocide to enter for a casual football match and then say, oh, what's going on? They're going crazy and beating up the local taxi drivers and causing havoc in our city. What on earth are we going to do now? You morons, of course this is what they're gonna do, because this is what they are doing, you know what I mean? Here's a clip that was magically found on the BBC where somebody's saying, I've spoken to a fan who went to the match last night who reports seeing Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters on the Amsterdam metro going up and down the carriages 3 or 4 times looking for a fight. Connor Dalton tells me, I felt worried. Everyone was going into the city, so everyone knew what was going to happen. Everyone? Apparently not everyone, not these doofuses at the newspapers with an IQ of a toilet brush. He adds that he is shocked by the portrayal of the incident in the media, adding that the attacks were completely provoked and Palestinian flags were torn down the night before. What attacks? Well, I'll tell you what happened, because then, as we know, the population of Amsterdam is approximately 10% Arab. So these guys got their comeuppance. They had a right to defend themselves, and boy, did they. And there's clips going around them getting the Jerusalem kicked out of them. Here's one guy who definitely has his head screwed on properly.
Because last night they were targeted after their horrendous behaviour, and instead of maybe considering why UEFA let a country which is currently committing genocide and ethnic cleansing against Palestinians and whose football league is filled with racist teams who pride themselves on not employing Arabs, well, instead of dealing with that, of course, Zionists and Western media are pretending that this is somehow similar to the extermination of Jewish people in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. And I am sorry, this is ridiculous, and it diminishes the legacy of these horrors, because these people were not targeted on the basis of their Jewishness. They were targeted because Maccabi Tel Aviv fans are violent hooligans who were rampaging through the streets of Amsterdam.
And not to mention, right at the beginning of the match, there was a couple of minutes silence for the, was it flood victims in Spain? And look how disrespectful these people were. And here is one of the people that was shouting anti-Arab chants. Look at him with that giant weapon nested on his right side. Yes, he seems like a peaceful, jolly fellow. It's crazy how they went there looking for problems, they got a response, and then you've got the likes of the Times of Israel comparing it to a pogrom. Oh no! Remember what happened all those years ago when loads of us were put in these chambers and... Hang on a minute right here. How on earth are you deriving some sort of comparison? And even the New York Times, when it was talking about this, the only evidence of anti-Semitism was the president of the European Commission. Other than that, no one else has said this. So I don't know why the headlines are dominated with this lie, frankly. But isn't this what we're used to seeing? Israel poking its nose where it does not belong. Then when there is a human reaction, they start playing the victim. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll agree with me. Amsterdam has a right to defend itself. Let's leave it there, guys. Until next time. Assalamu alaikum.